through is 0809 4440981. And you can also tweet at Smooth981 or streaming this live on YouTube as well. So you can catch the live stream and post a comment on there. It's Smooth981 on YouTube. Analyst this morning is Mr. C and Ikemesit. Good morning.
Hey. Good morning, ZB. Morning, Rita.
Good morning, Sylvie.
Yeah,
Good
and I
morning,
know that
Genesis.
that's my non-Zoom voice.
Good morning,
Yes,
Genesis.
we like the U voice. All right, and our first story comes from Punch. The Supreme Court has restrained the federal government from implementing the Friday deadline for the currency swap. Now, a seven-man panel of the court, led by Justice John Okoro, in a unanimous ruling, granted an interim injunction that has restrained the federal government, the CBN, and commercial banks from implementing the Friday dates as a deadline for the old Naira notes. And still Wednesday, the IMF and the World Bank have also urged the CBN to extend the time limit.
Okay, so thank you, Ziggy. Now, these are very interesting times. Now, the Genesis is looking at me, and if you can join YouTube, this will be brilliant. So, a few days ago, a High Court of the Federal Capital Territory did issue a restraining order against the federal government and the CBN from stopping or extending the deadline for the old Naira notes. And that order was to last for 7 days, which would have taken us to the 14th of February, sometime next week, which incidentally is the Day of Love as it celebrated Valentine's Day. So, yesterday at the Supreme Court, three states, Kaduna, Kogi, and Zamfara, I believe, through their council, applied for an ex parte order restraining the federal government and the central bank from complying with the February 10th deadline for stopping the legal status of the old currency notes, and that is the 200, the 500, and the 1,000 notes. Now, the order has been granted by the Supreme Court, and we return to court next week on the 15th. So, again, this is a 7-day order, and it's sad for me as a legal practitioner because we then have two courts in Nigeria issuing conflicting decisions.
No, it's not conflicting. The Supreme Court.
No. When I say it's conflicting, the Supreme Court ultimately has the final say.
Yeah.
But when you look at it, in the space of 48 hours, two different courts are giving two different decisions. Maybe the worry is conflicting, two different decisions. And it's instructive that they've now agreed to hear the matter next week. Now, between now and next week, I'm not sure that they have served all the other parties in this matter.
My understanding is that only the federal government is the party. I mean, the CBN might decide to ask to be joined, right? But my understanding is that those three states only took the federal government to the Supreme Court, which raises the issue about whether the Supreme Court has a jurisdiction to hear this matter to begin with.
No. So, in matters of disputes between state and the federal government, the Supreme Court has original jurisdiction.
On all substantive issues?
Yes.
Okay.
So, but it's instructive to note the position of the Minister of Justice, and he intends to argue that this case be dismissed. Now, the truth of the matter is this. The central bank, under law, has the right to manage Nigeria's currency. The central bank, under law and subject to the approval of the president, can determine when certain legal currency lose their legality. Now, what has happened is there have been bottlenecks in implementing this policy. And yes, everyone is going through harrowing and traumatic experiences in getting cash. I'm not excluded. I'm putting this out there because the chemist is looking at me funny again. Now,
because you're about to say something funny.
So here's what it is, right? We can only continue to postpone the evil day, right? There's a reason why this policy was put in place. And with every good policy, you are more likely to find teething problems when executing them. Yes.
a teething problem.
No, teething problems are relative.
No,
No, they are.
this is the equivalent of, let's stay on the teething mantra. This is the equivalent of having a full body fever. This is not one teeth is shaking or my gum is unstable.
So
The economy is convulsing because of this.
So again, we have to go back to what the policy was set out to achieve.
So what is it?
So prior to the policy, the bulk of the cash, Nigeria's cash, was outside the banking system, which is an aberration. With this policy, it's designed to, yes.
No, I don't think so.
No, you don't think so. It's
No.
different from what.
Okay,
it's
let's
supposed
Mr. C finish up.
So with this policy, there are a number of things sought to be achieved. One is reduce the cost of cash handling. Two, discourage and try to reduce to another low minimum the incidences of money laundering. Three, vote buying, because the president has continually made reference to it. And what's the fourth
Lower
one?
inflation.
I don't know how that's going to work, but that's what they said.
It's not going to work.
Mm.
Don't worry.
I don't. That's why I said I don't know how. It's
I've
going
done
to
the thinking. It's not going to. It's not going to address inflation.
Agreed.
Mhm.
So, if we extend it, right? If we do extend this policy, for how long are we extending it? And one thing with Nigerians generally is we don't tend to comply with deadlines unless there's a threat of something at risk. It's the truth. From PVCs, just even the business of collecting PVCs, it was only when it was crunch time they started rushing out in their thousands and their hundreds of thousands, and the deadline had to be extended. Nigerians don't respect timelines. I'm sorry to say this on radio, but it's the truth. Check events. An event starts at 3, people are strolling at 5.
No. Now
No,
you've made it a cultural issue.
It is a cultural issue.
but it's
though.
not.
It's
But
not?
It's not. And you see, I'll give you some context. There is no country
Mhm.
in the history
Yes.
of the world,
Mm-hmm.
right, on the matter of a currency change that onboards new currencies in 2 months. The problem was the timeline. I don't have a problem with the fact that we have new currencies. The problem was the timeline. The CBN should have come out with this sometime in the middle of last year or sometime early last year. When we last did this in 2004, the onboarding period, and interestingly, it was this notes that we were changing, that we changed from the old ones to this ones. It was 9 months. Croatia joined the Eurozone on the 1st of January. Right now, this is the middle of February. You still have a situation in Croatia where you can use both Croatian koruna and the euro. When the euro itself was created in 1999, there was a full 1-year onboarding period. You're talking about advanced economies, France, Germany, Spain, Italy. They have a greater institutional capacity for implementation than Nigeria. How do you expect to onboard your 3 most high valued and most used currencies? Because I can't remember the last time I went to an ATM and withdrew 100 naira or 50 naira or 20 naira, right? It's the 200s, 500s, and 1000s that are the most currencies that are in circulation. How do you expect to replace all of that in 8 weeks? It does not make sense. This is not a situation where Nigerians were late to the party. The implementation of it does not make sense. The issue that you talked about with respect to the cashless policy, I literally have month-on-month NIBS data, right, on the value of electronic transactions that Nigerians, right, typically do. The value of electronic transactions
Continues to grow.
Yeah, it continues to grow month on month, right?
Yes.
In December, we did 4.2 trillion naira worth of electronic transactions. Do you know why the cashless policy appears to be stuck right now? It's because you only have a situation where about 42 million Nigerians are banked, right? So the cashless policy has plateaued. For the Nigerians who are part of the banking or the financial system, a lot of them, right, have adopted electronic means of fulfilling bills payments. What the CBN needs to be doing is to think of a way of getting the remaining 130, 140, 150 million plus Nigerians who aren't in the financial system into the financial system. And I don't know how you're going to get those people to trust banking as it's currently constructed in Nigeria with this kind of bungled implementation.
All right, so coming back to this ruling by the Supreme Court, what is the way forward? Where are we going from here?
So where we're going from here is that there have been concerted efforts to stop or postpone the implementation of this new Naira design policy. And there are different schools of thought, right? So there's a school of thought Ikemesit subscribes to that says, look, we need more time, right? Now, the question to this school of thought is, how much more time? Are we speaking 6 months? Are we speaking a year? Are we speaking 2 years?
You can give all of 2023
all of 2023
as a good rule of thumb.
So at the end of 2023, my further question to the school of thought is, will there not still be a need for a further deadline? Because he's made references to a large portion of the population that is unbanked. Yes, I know the CBN has tried to bring in money mobile agents, and all the major telcos now have payment service banks. Now, how far that goes, because I think they have their eye on the Kenyan example, and they want to replicate it here. The Kenya, Ghana, and South Africa examples, they want to replicate it here. How soon that can be done is a challenge. And
to be clear, those three countries did not do it punitively.
Friend,
we are doing it punitively.
We have, so there's a different context. Nigeria is a peculiar case.
Oh, we only respond to punishment as Nigerians. That's our peculiarity.
Okay, let's take a few messages coming through. Shegun says, good policy by CBN, but very poor implementation. People are suffering. Good judgment by the Supreme Court. Nigerians against the judgment are selfish, mainly for their political reasons. And Abimbola says, Mr. C, you're talking like a politician. Thumbs up to Chemist. For a good policy to thrive, the timing must be right. Election in 2 weeks and biting fuel shortages are enough for people to worry about. Timing for this redesign is very wrong, and it shows that the government is highly insensitive. Yak says, good morning, team. India achieved it overnight.
No, it didn't.
And
India saw a much more chaotic experience than Nigeria, right? With respect to this, because with India, you just think of Nigeria multiplied by 5. That's what happened.
Yak, I think this is okay. Nee says also the informal sector has been grossly undervalued. It's just impractical to expect 300 billion naira cash to be enough even in 1 year to cater for our economy. Even in the US in 2021, they had $53 billion in circulation. Okay, I would have to confirm that. Dami from Ikeja says, calling the naira scarcity a teething problem is like calling a pregnancy waist pain.
Yes.
Let's take a quick break. And when we return, we'll continue the conversation on Freshly Pressed. As always, we want to read your messages. 0809 440 981. That's the WhatsApp number. And you can also catch the live stream. I see your comments coming through. Do stay with us. It's Freshly Pressed.
Anxiety away.
We should be all the other stories and just talk about this.
But teething is a painful process. Teething refers to pain. So when I say teething,
there are levels to pain. We know what it is. Zibi and I understand what teething means. No. There are levels to this pain, man.
You are looking at teething from the perspective of babies.
I see. I know for a fact. Right. Momsy retired from the Mint. I have cousins that still work at the Mint. One works in production. They are not printing enough money. They are not printing enough nairas. And it's intentional, right? Because to your point,
Mr. C, could you help me move this forward, please?
If the point is to make cash less attractive, then it makes sense for you to print less notes than the number of notes you're pulling in. Do you know what an extended timeline would have done? It would have modulated demand.
But wouldn't that be against what they're trying to achieve?
You've created a situation now where no, if you wanted to mess up things,
we're streaming live.
It's fine now. They get to hear the actions.
Please.
See, if the point was to mess up a particular candidate, do it much earlier.
Okay, we are going on.
It gives him more time to recover.
You're already printing less cash. You're printing less cash.
Smooth 98.1. I hope you are watching this live stream on YouTube. Just search for us on YouTube, and you can see Chemist, Mr. C, and I here in the studio. This is Freshly Pressed. As always, we'd love to get your thoughts. The WhatsApp number is 0809 440 981. And you can also tweet at Smooth981. Just before we went on a break, we're talking about the Supreme Court's decision with regards to the deadline for the new Naira introduction. We've got some tweets coming in, a lot of messages coming through. And yes, fellas, I'm turning on your mics.
You open Pandora's box and you're expecting us to just behave.
Okay, it does seem like this is a story that needs more time. Are we continuing with this story or do we move forward?
No, no, let's move forward. I mean, before
Okay.
it strains my very good relationship with Mr. C.
All right, I'm just going to read a few. Ajiji says the terrorism and kidnapping going on in Nigeria is being curbed with the new Naira redesign. And this is from Twitter. Banking the unbanked has been ongoing for 20 years without success. The CBN policy must stand. Yinka Bolu says, I think we're still getting our arguments wrong. We all knew this cash policy means that the new notes will never be in the same quantity as the old. The payment services were meant to bridge that gap. So let's jointly attack these banks over their poor IT infrastructure so they can sit up. And a message from NG from Ejibo, they should not extend it. People are also hoarding the money. As far as the old notes are in circulation, money will remain scarce. And Anthony says, can we stop comparing Nigeria to the West on this cash swap policy? Their politicians surely do not behave like ours, and our bankers too. We have different situations here. Okay, so let's move on to the next story. And this one is coming from Daily Times. So the Lagos State government has announced a 50% cut in transportation fares on all government-owned transport systems. So this cut is going to last for 7 days, and it will extend from the BRT buses to the first and last mile buses and even the water services as well. And the government has also announced it's setting up food banks in certain areas of the states.
Yeah, indeed. So this cut will affect all BRT bus services, the lag ride taxi scheme, first mile and last mile buses, government owned.
The ferries.
Yeah, and also the ferries. Yeah, so I think it's good. The governor also said that they'll be pushing out more calorie cards to enable more Lagosians to get on board those services, right? So that they can take advantage of those. The only good idea, considering the current state, right, of the economy, the commissioner of police, right, for Lagos recently said that they had gotten intel that there were groups and there were people who were planning violent acts just in reaction to the energy crisis, right, and the currency crush that Mr. C still insists on defending, as a result. So this is a good and a decent practice step. The only concern I have is that just 7 days.
Where's the money coming from?
It's just 7 days.
Where's the money coming from?
They're not saying the services will be free. They just said they're cutting the cost of it by
yeah,
half.
So that half that is going away, where's the money
So
coming from?
So here's the thing, right? And I'm typically
That's just a question.
I know I'm coming. I'm typically not a populist, right? But here is what I hear you say. It is fine for Nigerians to deal with pain for an extended period of time.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
But government cannot also for an extended period of time put in the policies necessary to ameliorate those, because this doesn't eliminate. This doesn't solve the fuel issue. This doesn't solve the currency issue. It just makes it less bearable.
Correct. I agree with the government. I'm in support of the government.
Okay.
But it's also important that we get our processes right and we get them right consistently over a period of time. So yes, kudos to the Lagos State government, 50% reduction. However, the people will still want to know, how is that 50% reduction being funded? We have a right to know.
It's fine. Yeah, I mean, someone is a big boy. He can defend himself, right, on that. But great idea.
Yeah.
I think that it should have lasted.
Yeah.
In principle, I think it should have lasted for a lot longer. I think 7 days is far too short. Plus, we don't know when this would actually start. Is it 7 days from the announcement was made? Is it 7 days from
I think it's scheduled to begin tomorrow, I believe.
Okay.
And the 7 days kind of works in line with statements that Mr. Mele Kyari had made about the situation improving. So who knows? We love extensions. We just might have another one.
Now, this is the kind of extension that you can sign me up for. I mean, it's not.
All right, Cisco Delgado says, I equally want to ask same questions. Where is the money coming from? And 7 days from today, that is from Wale. Olabode says, this transportation rebate is obviously a campaign tool, but the people can enjoy it, right?
Yeah,
whether it is or isn't. All right, so let's move on to the nation. This one is Well, federal government blaming the rising cost of petrol on the rush by petroleum marketers to make illicit profits from the hardship of Nigerians. Chief Timmy Silva, who is the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, stated this after the FEC meeting, which was presided over
So
by the
today is
president.
that kind of freshly pressed day, right?
Yeah. Okay. So I think this is truly ridiculous.
Yep. Yeah, Mr. C
Right.
and I finally agree on something
Finally.
today. Yeah.
You're coming out to blame. So you've identified the people who are doing the wrong thing. You haven't brought them to book. You haven't asked them to answer for their actions. And then you come out into the public space and you're telling Nigerians that you blame them for wanting to profit here.
It's actually even debatable if they're doing the wrong thing to begin with.
No. So,
Yeah.
no, let's take the statement at face value
Okay.
and assume that everything in that statement is correct. This is unbelievable.
Mhm.
Now, what the federal government clearly hasn't given us the full details of why this energy crisis has lasted this long, right? And what I see here is buck passing, okay? On several occasions, they have regaled us with tales of a mythical national reserve of 30 days fuel stock. Now, the challenge with that myth is that reserve has to be physically located somewhere in Nigeria. I've spoken to top industry players. They don't know where that reserve is located. Now, instead of them to take full responsibility for what is going on, they're blaming the marketers. Now, let's not forget the road networks in Nigeria have been suboptimal. And it's taking longer to get petrol trucked from Lagos to other parts of the country. Let's also not forget that the pipelines, for whatever reason, are still not working optimally. Let's not forget that bridging allowances are still being owed to transporters who truck the petrol from Lagos to other parts of the country. Now, in all of this, I don't see where the federal government is holding up its hand and saying, hey, we're responsible, we're sorry. No, it's to blame unidentified marketers. Are they major marketers? Are they independent marketers? So who exactly is profiteering? And if you know they're profiteering, that is almost criminal.
Why do you look?
To be very honest, to be very honest, Nigerians are despondent about this, and our government's first reaction is to blame this late in the cycle. When I mean, from a Lagos and a Southwest perspective, you've been in a state of energy starvation since September. If you live in Abuja, this has been happening since February of last year, and this is still where we are. It's irresponsibility.
And then here's where
At this point.
it gets even more shocking. The minister vowed to repeat an earlier directive to the Nigerian midstream and downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority to go after marketers profiteering. So as the Minister of State, you gave the first directive, it wasn't obeyed, it wasn't complied with, and you are still in office. You're now telling us you're going to give another directive. Is anything going to change? When you consistently do the same thing with the same results, how do you expect anything to change? Rather than tell us the steps they're taking to resolve this lingering fuel crisis all over the country, you're here passing the buck. This is true. And then, sadly, the Minister for Petroleum Resources is
The actual Minister of Petroleum
he's
Resources.
checking out.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's truly
he's,
a comical season.
he's not ministering anything.
Let's look at a few messages coming through. And this one's from Chibuzo. He says, everyone else is responsible for failures minus the government. Classic passing the buck. The minister and his minister of state keep pointing fingers at everyone else, and few are asking them tough questions. Shegun says, imagine other states giving rebates on transportation costs. Will they be condemned? Kudos to Lagos state government on this. And this one is Dami from Ikeja. Mr. C is absolutely fine with government destroying value and impoverishing already poor people, but is asking questions about where the money to make their pain a bit less painful
Tall.
is coming from.
Tall.
Pick
Really?
a struggle.
Help me asking.
Okay, and this message from TJ. TJ says halving the fares when the bus operations is yet to be sustainable as diesel costs have risen from 170 naira to 800 naira. Who would pay for this subsidy? All right, let's go on to
Mm, mhm.
did you want to say something?
No, not at
Yeah.
all.
Okay, so Mahmoud Yakubu, the chairman of INEC, has insisted that the general elections are going on as scheduled on the February 25th and March 11th, despite the current challenges being faced in the country. He gave this reassurance speaking with State House correspondents again after that Federal Executive Council meeting in Abuja.
Yeah, so basically, since the beginning of the month, Yakubu has met with the National Union of Road Transport Workers just to talk about the fact of the energy crisis. And the union themselves actually raised that concern, right? That with the energy crisis, how will election materials be moved, how will personnel be moved around the country, and all of that stuff. He's had a meeting with Melek, the star of our last story, to talk about it. And there apparently is a technical working committee right now that's been set up to ensure that all of the NNPC's depots prioritize supplying the INEX logistical network to ensure that election materials are moved around the country. And just at the beginning of this week, he met Central Bank Governor Godwin Emefiele, right, just to express concerns that a lot of third-party vendors that INEC retains for these purposes have concerns about how their payments will get through. A lot of them, and this is interesting, right? Because I actually read a story yesterday, way before, I had to look at it for Freshly Pressed. Yakub himself said that a lot of his vendors don't have bank accounts.
Yes, we spoke about
So they
this
need exactly.
yesterday.
So they need So they need cash advances. Be there, be looking, Mr. C. You're right. So so they need cash advances, and in historic cycles, they've been able to get they've been able to get priority access from the CBN. To be clear, INEC's accounts are with the CBN. So Godwin Emefiele assured him that they will have access to funds, right, to be able to settle their vendors, especially those who need to be paid prior to the elections,
Hello, sir.
just to
Hello,
ensure that
sir.
everything.
Hello,
Don't
sir.
hello sir here
Hello,
now.
sir.
That's the system. This is what you get when your
Hello,
institutional
sir.
capacity is
Hello,
hollowed
sir.
out,
Please,
and you've got
please.
national
All right,
elections.
Mr. C.
Let's stop this cash business. People have bank accounts if you want to work with INEC for the purposes of accountability and transparency, you must have a bank account.
If you're trying to, I'm coming. If you're trying to send election materials, right, to a remote part of the Bambara Mountains in Taraba State,
Correct.
how are you going to get it done?
You use locals.
Do you know that? Do you know that in some of these places there are no 2G networks? So even if you wanted to effect a transfer, right, how would a person verify that they've gotten payment in a situation where there's no network coverage?
So at what point is payment made? Is it before the service is
Mr.
delivered
C.
or after the service is delivered?
Mr. C.
These are valid questions.
Mr.
Why
C.
pay for a service that's not yet been delivered?
Mr.
Questions.
C. Mr. C.
Yes, sir.
Counter question: is there any country in the world right now
This
that's
feels like
completely
we're in court
eliminated
right
cash?
now.
Sorry?
Is there any country in the world right now that's completely eliminated cash as a
Nope.
means of?
I'm not aware
So
of any.
why are we talking as though cash is a bad word?
No, but see, it's in Nigeria when we have transactions populated by cash, you will then find fraud.
There are some transactions that will necessarily be only fulfilled by cash. Let's deal with it.
We are out of time, but I just want to read a few messages quickly. Mohammed via YouTube says the main point of the currency redesign is to catch politicians unaware. Extending and giving them more time defeats the entire purpose. I agree with Mr. C, not the man in white, who, by the way, is Ikemesit. And Dare says Ikemesit is spot on in his analysis on the CBN policy. Note also that the banks were recycling the old notes. The new notes were not seen in circulation up until just a few weeks ago. And right, let's go on to WhatsApp. This one is from Dr. Dr. I. Dr. I says Nigerians don't respect deadlines. That's true. This is not a currency change, but rather a replacement. It was supposed to be easy if Nigerians had fully embraced the cashless policy. Considering that we are not a backward nation, why do we have more than half of our currency outside the banks? The hundreds of millions hidden away is explained how. And that's all the time that we have for Freshly Pressed this morning. But thank you so much, Ikemesit, and thank you, Mr. C.
Thank you for enduring our whatever it is.
And thank you for listening. But we don't have to stop the conversation here. We can actually keep this going on social media. So tag at Smooth981 in your tweets. Do stay with us. There's a lot more to come on the Smooth Breakfast.
Hallmark Insurance. Anxiety away. Value assured.
Sometimes
Thank you.
sometimes it's good to take a controversial position.
Yep.